Respect earned, the battlefield was silent at last. Smoke rose from the ruins of the alien outpost, the air heavy with the smell of fire and metal. The bodies of machines lay scattered, their twisted forms a reminder of the storm that had just passed. The human, bloodied and exhausted, stood in the center of it all. His armor was broken in places, his face streaked with dirt, but his eyes still burned with that same fierce light that had carried him through every trial. Beside him, the princess stood tall. She was no longer the fragile figure who once hid behind veils of shame and whispers. She had fought, she had endured, and she had discovered her true strength, not because of a crown, but because one human refused to abandon her when the galaxy had mocked her. The alien nobles, the warriors, even the elders of the court, stood in silence. They had all doubted him. They had laughed when he chose her, the infertile princess, the so-called broken one. To them he had been a fool. But now, as the ruins smoked and the last enemy machines lay in silence, their laughter was gone. The human slowly helped the princess step forward. Her gown was torn, her hands carried cuts, but her head was high. She met the gazes of her people, once cold, now filled with awe and shame. The High Elder finally spoke, his voice trembling. "We were wrong," a murmur went through the crowd. They all knew it. The human had stood where none of their kind dared. He had faced trials meant to crush him, enemies built to kill, and yet he endured. Not only endured, he protected their princess with a devotion none of them had shown. The princess's voice cut through the air, steady and sharp. "You called me weak, you called me unworthy, but this human saw more than your titles, more than your cruel words. He saw me." Her words fell heavy. The nobles looked away, their arrogance broken. The warriors bowed their heads. The people, watching from afar, began to cheer, not for the elders, not for the court, but for the human and the princess who had stood together. The human said nothing at first. He did not bask in the praise. He simply looked at the princess, and in that look was everything. Loyalty, respect, and something deeper that words could not describe. She smiled faintly, knowing he needed no titles, no crowns. He had already earned more than that. Finally, the human spoke, his voice low but carrying across the ruined hall. "Strength is not in bloodlines. It is not in what you are born with. Strength is in the choices you make, and the promises you keep." The silence that followed was heavier than battle. His words cut deeper than any blade. Even the AI guardians, watching from their silent stations, lowered their lights as if in respect. The princess turned to him, her voice soft now. "You gave me more than protection. You gave me a chance to believe in myself." He shook his head gently. "You had that strength all along. You just needed someone to remind you, and then it happened." One by one, the alien nobles dropped to their knees, first with hesitation, then with full reverence. The warriors followed, lowering their weapons in salute. Even the proud elders bent, their pride shattered, their respect finally given. For the first time in centuries, an outsider, a human, was honored in the halls of their empire. But the human did not smile. He knew what respect truly meant. It was not the bowing of heads or the shouts of a crowd. Respect was standing side by side, never abandoning, never breaking trust. The princess slipped her hand into his, not as royalty reaching for a protector, but as an equal, as a partner. The galaxy would never forget this moment, the day a human's courage rewrote a legacy, and somewhere in the shadows, whispers began to spread. If one human could do this, what else was humanity capable of? The story of the fool who chose the infertile princess would be told for generations, not as a tale of mockery, but as the beginning of something greater. The human legacy, respect was earned, and it was only the beginning. The rising threat. The third chamber was different from the others. It was vast, circular, and strangely quiet. In the center stood a single pedestal carved of black stone, and on top of it lay a crystal sphere glowing with pale light. "This is the trial of wisdom," the princess whispered. "It is said that what rests here holds knowledge, but it also tempts the heart. Many who touched it were destroyed." The human walked forward slowly, his eyes fixed on the sphere. Strange whispers echoed again, but these were not like before. They were soft, inviting, promises of power, promises of victory. "Take me," the voices breathed, "and you will never fail again. No army can break you, no loss can haunt you. You will rule the stars." The princess felt her pulse race. She knew these voices. Old warnings told of the crystal's spirit, an ancient force that fed on greed and pride. Those who gave in were consumed, leaving nothing but hollow shells. She called out quickly, "Do not listen. It twists the mind. It will turn you into what you hate." The human stopped. His hand hovered just above the glowing sphere. His eyes narrowed, not with hunger but with thought. He turned slightly, his voice calm. "And if I destroy it?" The princess froze. "Destroy it? No one has ever dared. It is older than my people's history. It may not even break." But the human only clenched his fist. "Then I will try." Before the voices could grow stronger, before the temptation could dig deeper, he struck down with his bare hand. The pedestal cracked, and the sphere shattered with a scream that was not human. A surge of dark light burst out, rattling the chamber walls. The princess shielded her face from the blast, her heart pounding. When she looked up, the crystal was gone, reduced to dust. The whispers were silent. The gate ahead opened, but something else had changed. The air grew heavier, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The torches along the walls flickered wildly, as if some presence had been awakened. The princess's breath caught. "You broke the seal." The human frowned. "Seal?" She nodded slowly, fear filling her eyes. The crystal was not just a trial. It was a prison. It held something back. Even as she spoke, the ceiling shook violently. Dust rained down. A roar, low and thunderous, echoed through the citadel, so deep it rattled their bones. It did not come from this chamber. It came from below. The princess grabbed his arm. "We must go, now." They rushed through the open gate, emerging into a wide corridor that led back toward the upper halls. But the tremors followed them. From behind, walls cracked open, spilling molten light. The air grew hotter, thicker. "It is awake," the princess whispered, terror breaking her voice. "Something buried in the foundations. Something my ancestors swore to never unleash." The human did not slow. "Then we face it before it grows stronger." But she shook her head desperately. "You don't understand. It is not a beast. It is not a machine. It is a weapon, one made to end wars by ending worlds." The roar came again, this time closer. The ground split, and from the fissures rose tendrils of burning energy, crawling like serpents through the stone. They lashed out at the walls, tearing through metal and rock as if it were paper. Screams erupted in the distance. The council chamber above was no longer safe. The whole citadel was shaking, the alien nobles panicking, their arrogance turning into fear. The human and the princess reached the upper hall just as the doors burst open. Guards stumbled in, their faces pale. "The seal is broken," one cried. "The ancient core is rising." The councillors stood frozen, their eyes wide with dread. For the first time, their mocking laughter was gone. The eldest councillor turned sharply to the human, his voice trembling with anger and fear. "This is your doing. You have doomed us all." But before the human could reply, the floor beneath them cracked wide. A blast of burning light erupted upward, and a shape began to climb out from the depths. It was not fully formed, not fully alive, but its presence filled the hall with crushing weight. A weapon from another age. An abomination of fire and steel. The princess clutched the human's arm, her eyes shining with both fear and something else, hope. "They laughed at you, human, but now they will beg you to save them." The human stared at the rising threat, his jaw set, his body braced. He said nothing, but the fire in his eyes was louder than any words. The trials were over, but the true battle had just begun. The awakening of legacy. The chamber shook as the creature rose from the broken ground. Fire spilled from its body, and shards of steel clung to its frame like armor. Its eyes glowed red, wide as doors, staring down at all who trembled below. The councillors fled to the edges of the hall, their arrogance now drowned in terror. Guards drew their weapons, but their hands shook, their courage already broken. None dared to step forward. Only the human stood in the center, facing the beast. His figure was small against its towering size, yet he did not step back. The princess's voice cracked as she whispered, "That is no beast. It is the war core, the last weapon of the first flames. It was sealed by my ancestors after it nearly burned 3 worlds. And now, she swallowed hard. Now it will finish what it once began. The war core let out a roar that shook the pillars, a sound of fire and fury. Bolts of energy shot from its body, tearing holes in the walls. Stone and steel fell around them. The human glanced at the princess. If this was sealed by your ancestors, then maybe you know how to stop it. Her eyes dropped to the chain she always wore. The small stone at its center pulsed with faint light, the same light that now burned in the war core's body. She touched it with trembling fingers. This was my mother's last gift. She told me it was the key to my bloodline. I never understood. Until now, the human's gaze sharpened. It connects to the war core, doesn't it? She nodded, fear and revelation mixed in her eyes. The same fire that burns in me, burns in it. I was not born weak. I was born tied to this weapon. That is my secret, human. I am the prison as much as I am the heir. The counselors, hearing her words, shouted in rage and fear. She is cursed. One cried. She will bring our end. Shouted another. The princess flinched, but the human stepped in front of her. His voice was sharp, steady, unshakable. No, she's the only reason you are alive right now. Without her, this thing would already be free. The counselors fell silent. Their fear turned into shame, but still none stepped forward to help. The war core raised its burning arm, ready to strike. The human grabbed the princess's hand. If this weapon is tied to you, then we fight it together. You are not alone anymore. For a heartbeat, she looked into his eyes. She saw no mockery, no judgment, only faith. Faith she had never been given, even by her own blood. Something inside her broke free. The stone at her necklace glowed brighter, and fire raced through her veins. Not pain, power. Her body trembled as light burst from her skin, spreading into wings of flame that unfurled behind her. The chamber filled with heat, not destructive but alive. Gasps echoed through the hall. The guards fell to their knees, shielding their eyes. The counselors stared in awe. The human did not flinch. He stood in the firelight as if he had always belonged there. The war core roared again, its burning eyes now locked on her. The flames of its body flared higher, answering hers. The princess's voice rang through the hall, strong and unbroken. This is my legacy, not a curse, not a flaw. I am the heir of the first flames. She raised her hand, and the war core froze for a moment, its body trembling as if bound by invisible chains, but its strength was vast. The chains cracked, and the beast roared louder, forcing her back. The ground beneath her feet burned. The human caught her before she fell. His voice was firm, urgent. Don't fight it alone, use me. Use my strength, she gasped, struggling against the pressure. But you are only human. He cut her off with steel in his tone. Human is enough. Their hands clasped together and the fire between them merged. The war core shuddered violently as their combined force pushed against it. Sparks and flames collided, filling the hall with a storm of light. The counselors, who once mocked, now cowered behind broken pillars, praying the two would succeed. The princess felt her power grow steadier in his grip, as if his presence grounded the fire inside her, no longer wild, no longer unstable. Together, they controlled it. The war core staggered back, its roar twisting into something like fear. The human shouted over the storm, his voice carrying through the chaos. This ends here. Not with destruction, with legacy. The fire around them surged brighter than the sun. The war core writhed, fighting, resisting, but their strength pressed harder. And in that burning storm, the princess realized something. The laughter, the shame, the chains of her past no longer mattered. Beside him, she was not broken. She was not useless. She was the heir of fire, and he was the one who gave that fire purpose. The war core stumbled, its armor cracking. The final battle was coming. The citadel trembled, the skies above darkened, and every living soul held their breath. The rising threat had awakened, but so had the legacy of fire. And now, with a human by her side, that legacy had teeth. The trials begin. The next morning, the council chamber was filled with sharp voices and restless movement. Word of the human's choice had spread through the citadel like fire on dry wood. Delegates, nobles and guards all gathered, their eyes full of curiosity and scorn. The princess stood beside the human, her posture straight, though inside her chest burned with unease. The secret she had confessed the night before still weighed heavy on her heart, but she pushed it down. This was not the time to reveal it. The eldest counselor, a tall alien with silver ridges running across his skull, stepped forward. His voice boomed, carrying authority that silenced the room. If the human dares to bind himself to our princess, then he must prove his worth. We cannot allow weakness to stand beside our bloodline, even if that bloodline is flawed. The insult was sharp, meant to wound, but the human did not flinch. His calm eyes remained fixed on the counselor. "And how?" the human asked evenly. "Do you judge worth?" The counselor raised his arm, pointing to the stone doors at the far end of the chamber. They opened with a heavy grind, revealing a long, dark corridor lined with glowing runes. The air that seeped out was cold and smelled of metal and dust. "The trials," the counselor declared. 3 tests, designed to measure strength, courage, and wisdom. Many of our own have failed them. Some never returned. Gasps spread across the chamber. Eyes turned to the human, waiting to see fear. But he only gave a small nod. "I will take your trials," he said simply. The princess's heart tightened. She had heard the stories of the trials. Pits of fire, illusions meant to break the mind, and creatures summoned from the old wars. No outsider had ever been allowed inside, let alone survived. She wanted to speak, to stop him, but the weight of all those eyes forced her into silence. The human walked toward the dark corridor, his boots echoing against the floor. The princess followed, her steps light but quick. When they were out of earshot, she whispered, "You do not understand what you face. These trials are not fair. They are designed to kill." He glanced at her, his voice steady. "Good. Then they will show me the truth about myself." She wanted to argue, but his calmness disarmed her again. There was no arrogance in his words, only certainty. The corridor swallowed them in shadows. Torches lit themselves along the walls, one by one, as if welcoming him into the unknown. The first chamber opened wide before them, the trial of strength. A vast pit stretched across the floor, filled with shifting stone platforms. From the darkness below came the sound of grinding gears and rushing heat. Lava glowed faintly far beneath. Suspended across the pit was a massive gate, sealed by heavy chains. From the walls, constructs of metal and bone rose, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. They moved with inhuman speed, their weapons extending into blades and claws. The princess gasped. "These are war machines. Relics from the first wars." The human stepped forward, his hand tightening into a fist. "Then let them test me." The first construct lunged, its blade swinging in a deadly arc. The human sidestepped with speed born from experience. His body moved with precision, not wasteful, not wild, each motion measured. He slammed his fist into the construct's neck joint, snapping wires and metal. Sparks burst into the air as the machine fell. The next 2 came together, one high, one low. The human ducked, rolled, and struck upward with a brutal kick, shattering a chest plate. He grabbed the fallen machine's blade arm and ripped it free, turning it against the others. Metal clashed against metal, echoing through the chamber like thunder. The princess's breath caught as she watched. He fought without hesitation, without fear. His movements were not just survival, they were mastery, sharpened by years of hardship she could only imagine. Piece by piece, the machines fell until the floor was littered with broken fragments. The chains above groaned, and the gate began to rise, signaling the trial was complete. The human dropped the makeshift blade and looked back at the princess. Sweat glistened on his brow, but his eyes still burned steady. "One down," he said simply. The princess could barely speak. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from something deeper, a realization that the human was not ordinary. He carried something inside him that her people had long forgotten, a will that no machine, no trial could bend. Ahead, the second chamber loomed, darker, colder. The trial of courage awaited. The princess whispered, almost to herself, "They laughed at you, human. But maybe soon, they will fear you." The second chamber, was not filled with machines or fire. It was worse. The corridor narrowed into a long tunnel of darkness. No torches lit the way. Only the faint hum of energy pulsed through the walls like a heartbeat. The princess hesitated at the entrance, her hand tightening around the chain at her neck. "This is the trial of courage," she whispered. "It does not test the body. It tests the mind." The human stepped inside without a word. The darkness swallowed him and the princess followed close behind. At first it was silent, only the sound of their footsteps. Then came the whispers. They slithered through the air, voices sharp and cruel. They called out the human's fears, his doubts, his past. "You failed them. You are nothing. You will die here and she will be left alone." The human clenched his jaw but kept walking. The voices grew louder, layering over each other until they roared like a storm. Shadows began to take shape along the walls, ghostly figures reaching out with hands of smoke and flame. The princess trembled. She had been warned of this. The trial dragged out the deepest fears of those inside, tearing at their hearts until they broke. She feared what it might show her, but more than that, she feared what it might show him. Suddenly, one shadow stepped out in front of the human. Its form was clearer than the others. A soldier, broken and bloodied, its face twisted in agony. "You left us," the shadow snarled. "We died while you lived." The human froze. For a heartbeat, the princess saw something in his eyes, a flicker of pain, of guilt. His shoulders seemed heavier, his breath slower. The princess's chest tightened. Was this his past? A war he had fought, lives he had lost? The shadow pressed closer. "You should have saved us. You failed your own." The human dropped to one knee, gripping his head. The whispers swirled like knives, pressing into his skull. The princess's own fears started to creep into her mind. Visions of chains, cages, fire burning through her veins. She wanted to run, to close her eyes, but then she looked at him, kneeling under the weight of his ghosts. Her fear turned into something else. Anger. Not at him, but at the trial. At the voices that dared to tear him down when he had stood for her without hesitation. She stepped forward, her hand grabbing his arm. "Listen to me," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "They are lies. Shadows cannot judge you. You are more than what you lost." The human lifted his head slowly, his eyes locked on hers. In that moment, something steady returned to him. The shadows hissed, recoiling from her voice. "You think I am weak," the princess said louder, speaking to the darkness itself. "But you forget he stands for me. And I stand with him." The chamber shook. The shadows screamed, their forms ripping apart like smoke in a storm. The whispers faded, leaving silence so deep it felt alive. The human rose to his feet, his breathing heavy but controlled. He looked at her, truly looked, as if seeing her differently now. Not as someone broken, not as someone mocked, but as someone who had reached into his darkness and pulled him out. Their bond was not spoken, but it was forged in that silence. The walls lit with pale light. The trial was over. The gate ahead unlocked, stone grinding as it slowly opened. The princess let out a shaky breath. Her legs trembled, but she stood tall. "You would have made it alone," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, not this one. You were the light they couldn't break." Her heart pounded at his words. For years she had been told she was worthless, but in his eyes, she had been strength. That truth felt heavier than any crown. Together, they stepped into the next chamber. The trial of wisdom awaited. But as they walked, neither spoke. They didn't need to. Something had shifted between them. What began as a bond of circumstance was becoming something far deeper. A bond neither the council nor the trials could break. The mockery. The royal court of Xylaris shone like a jewel in the sky. Silver pillars rose high into the air, glowing with blue light. Hundreds of alien nobles filled the vast chamber, their eyes sharp and mocking as they watched the strange scene unfold. At the center of the hall stood the princess. She was tall, graceful, her skin faintly glowing with pale light. Yet whispers filled the court whenever her name was spoken. To her people she was broken. They called her the infertile one, the daughter of a powerful line who could never continue it. Now she stood before rows of suitors. Warriors from across the stars had gathered to choose their partners. Each suitor boasted about strength, armies and bloodlines. The princess lowered her eyes, already knowing no one would want her. But then, the human stepped forward. Gasps spread through the chamber. A human? Here, in the royal trials. His clothes were simple, his frame smaller than most alien warriors. His dark eyes scanned the room, calm but unshaken. Slowly, he pointed at her. "I choose her," he said. For a heartbeat, silence held the room. Then, laughter exploded. Dozens of alien nobles burst out laughing, their voices echoing like cruel bells. One heavy-armed general leaned forward, sneering. "The human chooses the infertile princess? He must be blind." Another alien queen covered her mouth, shaking her head. "Humans, always foolish. They know nothing of legacy." Even the suitors laughed, their voices sharp with insult. They flexed their arms, showing their weapons, their bloodlines, their strength. Compared to them, the human looked weak. And now, by choosing her, he looked even weaker. The princess froze. Her heart pounded in her chest, shame burning her cheeks. She wanted to vanish, to run far away from their laughter. Even she didn't understand. Why would he, an outsider, choose her? The alien king, her father, leaned forward on his throne. His golden crown glowed in the chamber's light. His voice was cold, curious, but touched with anger. "Human, do you know what you are saying? You choose a daughter with no future, a princess mocked by her own people. Do you want the galaxy to laugh at you?" All eyes turned to the human. He stood straight, unshaken, his voice steady. "Let them laugh." The chamber went silent for a second time. His words cut through the noise like a blade. The princess's breath caught. She looked at him, searching for mockery, for pity, but found none. His eyes held no shame, no weakness, only a strange strength she had never seen before. The suitors jeered louder, trying to drown him out. "He is mad. He chooses weakness. A human has no place here." But the human didn't flinch. He stepped closer to the princess, standing at her side. His presence was steady like a shield. He didn't touch her, but she felt safer in that single step than she ever had in the grand halls of her father's court. The king's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand for silence, and slowly the laughter faded. His voice was sharp, cutting through the chamber. "Very well. If the human wishes to shame himself, let him. But know this, outsider. Choices here are not without trials. You must prove your worth. If you fail, you both fail, and the galaxy will remember your disgrace." The human met the king's eyes without fear. "I accept." The princess's chest tightened. Did he not understand what was coming? The trials were brutal. Even the strongest warriors fell. She wanted to tell him to stop, to save himself, but when she opened her mouth, no words came. Something in his calm stare silenced her. The king leaned back on his throne, his voice booming through the hall. "Then let the trials begin." The nobles cheered, their laughter now mixed with cruel joy. They wanted to see the human broken. They wanted to see the infertile princess fall. To them, it was already decided. The princess lowered her gaze, her heart heavy with shame and confusion. But deep inside, a tiny spark flickered. The human had chosen her, not in pity, but with certainty. And though the galaxy laughed, his voice still echoed in her mind. Let them laugh. It was the first time she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was more to this human than anyone could see. The princess's secret. The princess sat in silence after the cruel laughter faded away. The hall was empty now, except for her and the human. She kept her eyes low, her fingers tight around the thin chain of the necklace she always wore. The laughter of the others still echoed in her ears, cutting deeper than any blade. The human stood a short distance from her, not speaking, not asking. He simply waited, His silence was not heavy. It felt calm, steady, like a rock that would not move no matter how many storms came. For the first time, she felt no judgment pressing against her. Finally, her voice broke through the quiet. "They laugh because I cannot give what they value most," she whispered. Her words trembled, but they were sharp. "I am called infertile, useless, a burden on my people." The human tilted his head slightly. His expression did not change into pity, nor into mockery. He simply listened, as if every word she spoke mattered. She continued, her tone bitter. "Among my people, a princess must carry bloodlines forward. Power, strength, future heirs. All of it comes from us. But I was born different. My body, it cannot do what theirs can. To them, I am broken." Her fingers gripped the chain harder until her knuckles went pale. The human noticed, but he did not interrupt. She lifted her eyes for the first time. There was fire in them, but it was trapped behind layers of sorrow. "Do you understand, human? That is why they laugh at you. They think you're foolish for standing beside me, for choosing me. To them I am a dead branch." The human stepped closer now. His boots echoed against the stone floor. He looked down at her with calm eyes that carried no fear, no disgust. When he spoke, his voice was low but steady. "Where I come from, worth is not measured by what others call weakness. Many of the strongest I knew were born with scars, limits, or burdens. They became legends because of what they did, not what people said." Her lips parted slightly, caught off guard. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her own family. "You do not see me as broken?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "I see someone they fear, because you carry something they cannot understand." For a moment, the princess forgot her shame. She blinked, unsure if he was mocking her or speaking truth, yet his face gave nothing but sincerity. The silence stretched until she finally let go of the chain. Her hand lowered and she whispered, "There is something they do not know. A secret I have hidden all my life." The human did not push, did not demand. He only said, "If you trust me, tell me." Her eyes darted around the empty hall, as if shadows could still be listening. Then, slowly, she leaned closer, her voice barely above a breath. "My body may not give heirs, but I was born with something else, something rare, a power my people fear to even name." Her hand hovered over her chest. "The energy inside me, it is not like theirs. It burns differently. My mother told me before she died that it comes from the first flames, an ancient force thought to be gone forever. She swore me to silence. If the council knew, they would not mock me. They would cage me, use me, or worse, end me." The human's eyes narrowed, but not in fear. He looked at her as though a puzzle was beginning to form. "That is why you hide behind their insults. Better broken in their eyes than dangerous." She nodded, her throat tightening. For years she had carried this secret, drowning under the weight of it. And now, for the first time, she had spoken it aloud. Her voice shook as she asked, "And, now that you know, will you leave? Will you see me as they do? As something to be used?" The human leaned forward, his gaze unflinching. "No. I will see you as what you are. A princess who carries the fire of something greater, not broken, not useless, but dangerous in the way only legends are." Her breath caught. A strange warmth rose in her chest, fighting the cold that had lived there for so long. She studied him carefully, searching for cracks in his words, for lies hidden behind his calm expression. But she found none. For the first time, she wondered if the human was not foolish for standing beside her, but brave. And in that quiet hall, with shadows clinging to the corners, something shifted between them. Not trust yet, not love, but the fragile beginning of both. The princess held her secret no longer alone. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, her story was not over.